fixing this and that, giving it up to God and then taking it back. Just release and let it go. You don't even have to think about it no more. Get out of the way, get out of the way, get out of the way, get out of the way.
Please join me in prayer. And as we just move into this time together, in this place of connection, as we turn our attention to this message, let us just know that we are all one, we are all connected. And just breathing that in and breathing that out, we know that we are one, we are connected because we are all one of source. We all come from the same source, the one God, the one power, the one presence. How beautiful and reassuring it is to know that, because that just tells us that we are always connected, never alone. And so as we move into this time and we turn our attention to this message, we do so just knowing that this is all we need right here and right now. There is nothing else requiring our attention. We just allow ourselves to be here, be fully present. I know all are blessed. I know this time is perfect. And I know whatever message needs to be relayed is. Whatever needs to be heard is heard. It's perfect, it's good, it's God. I let it go and I let it be. And so it is. A number of years ago, I was released from my job. It was a very good job. It paid very well. And one day I had the job and the next day I did not. And what happened for me after that was I started to have physical symptoms, and an ailment came up, an illness, if you will, and I started to suffer a little bit. And I was uncomfortable, and it was a little frightening, and I was getting some care, but it was just not a good place to be. And time went by, and I wasn't getting employment, so I was still not particularly in my happy place. And then what happened was I suffered an injury, which caused excruciating pain. And so now here I am, I've got some physical ailments, I've got this pain going on, and I'm unemployed. It's funny what we tell ourselves, because at that time I told myself that I was doing really well. I was handling it, I had the right mindset, everything was good. And then one day, someone posted on my Facebook page a comment. And the comment was in the gist of, she was hoping that someday soon, her friend, that would be me, who was always so positive, would come back. And I looked at that and I thought, well, that's interesting, and some of you might think that's a little harsh, but you know what? That's what we need friends for sometimes, is to kind of help us reel it in and get realigned. And what I noticed was that I had been grumbling, that whatever was not feeling good about me, I was putting that out on Facebook and creating that toxic space for everyone to see. So I regrouped. I gathered it in. I got some prayer support. I did all of those wonderful things that we do to help us shift and adjust. And what I realized is that when I had been released from that job, there were some things that took place in that scenario that I had not forgiven. I had done what I could to be accountable for the error of my ways and the things that I did and any misstep, and tried to move on, but I hadn't. I was still stuck back there. And then what happened was my body started to respond to the way I was feeling. And then from that, then I incurred an injury, which is pretty much how it happens. And so I was able to shift and adjust and look at it differently. Jonathan Lockwood Huey says this: pain is what the world inflicts upon us. Suffering is our emotional reaction when we fail to make the difficult conscious choice to choose joy. I thought I had chosen joy, but I hadn't. I really didn't want that job anymore. It was really starting to affect me. I was really starting to kind of grumble about it while I was in the job. But it would have been really nice to have found a more graceful, positive way to have removed myself from that place of employment, as opposed to the way that I chose. You see, pain is inevitable. I think I mentioned that last week. We're going to have pain in our lives. We live in form. And we're highly emotional beings. So whether it's an emotional pain or a physical pain, it's going to show up. But suffering, my friends, is a choice. That is optional. We may have health issues, we may have challenges, but we don't have to suffer unless we choose to. And suffering comes from that belief I talked about last week as well, that sometimes we don't think we should have any pain. And then when we do have pain, when we do struggle, then we're all upset with it, and then we go into that place of suffering. No one ever said life would be easy. And that mindset that says it should all be easy breezy and it should be wonderful and roses, I was going to say that would be almost like living in a fairy tale world, but even in the fairy tale stories, there was suffering, there was trauma. There was that moment of endurance where someone had to overcome some challenge. So that is even connected to the fairy tale concept that we might have been taught. So what we need to do is lean into the discomfort, which is my talk title today. Lean into the discomfort. I'm feeling uncomfortable. What's that about? Let's seek what the message is within that. Because when we choose suffering, as I had done so many years ago, we get stuck in this cycle of just disgruntledness and suffering, and we can't rise above it, and we don't have the growth, and we don't have the shifting and the adjusting. There's a lot of discomfort in our world today. So much work for us to do to be in support of others. And when we look at some of it, the racial unrest, maybe the political arena, so many places that we can look to see those moments and those expressions of suffering, we become really uncomfortable. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to turn away from that and pretend it isn't happening, because that's not part of the real world either. We want to look at it and see what is ours to do. How can we support? We know and we teach in our philosophy that we are all perfect, whole, and complete. And we are in the world of spirit. In the physical realm, there are other things that transpire. So again, we can look at what is causing the discomfort. And most of the time, it's a thought. It's a way of thinking or a belief. That I've started thinking something should be a certain way and now I'm uncomfortable. You may not know this, but thoughts are not always true. Thoughts are not always true. It's something that we have manifested inside the mind, but it doesn't mean that it's factual. So we want to take a look at that. We want to look at the very structure of how we are, how we show up. We want to turn our attention to the more positive mindset, not in a ridiculous fashion where we're not even paying attention to reality, but to find the positive message, to find the positive nugget within. Ginny Rometty, who is the CEO, or at one time was, of IBM, said it this way: growth and comfort do not coexist. So if you're feeling really, really comfortable, you're probably not growing right now. And that's okay, because we're going to have moments in time like that. But when we have those moments of that real, true discomfort where we have to face something we didn't want to face, that's when we grow. In our core concepts, we have a core concept number 8, and it is the action and practice of forgiveness. It speaks to this. In the eternal now, there can be no place for divine anger, unforgiveness, or punishment. Once we recognize a reason for forgiveness and we step into this condition, we become free to live in the eternal now. When we aren't forgiving, we're living in the past. When we aren't forgiving, we become the jailer and the jailed. We become imprisoned by something that transpired before now. And to be able to move into that place and that space of forgiveness alleviates that. It releases us from that. It lets go of that bondage. What I discovered when I got to look at what was going on with me all those years ago was the need to forgive. I needed to forgive myself. I needed to forgive the individuals who made the decision that I needed to be released from the company. And part of the challenge was I had all of these friends and all of these coworkers who didn't think that I should have been removed from the job. So they were calling me and they were building up my story. I could have moved into righteous mode. I still didn't have a job, but I could have gone in that place. Well, how dare they? What I tried to do instead was to just take accountability, knowing that I had made a mistake. But what I didn't do was the act and the practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness is an essential step for each of us before we can really flourish in our lives. It's a necessary practice. And it doesn't mean, as we've talked before, that you have to invite all those people who ever hurt you over, that you have to bring them into your inner circle. You can have that scenario, that situation where you look at the situation and you forgive it. You send blessings through the world of spirit to that person, but you don't have to connect with them and have conversations with them and have them in your inner circle anymore. Because perhaps you've discovered a relationship that just doesn't work for you. And that's okay. That's called setting boundaries. We teach that the ultimate goal of life is complete emancipation from all discord of every nature. And we are reminded that this goal is certain to be attained by all. We just have to do the work. We can't just sit on our laurels and wait for it all to show up for us. There's work to do. There's work within that internal mechanism of who I am and how I am. When I took the time to look at what needed to be forgiven, I knew I needed to forgive myself. And what I got to forgive about myself was that I was becoming, as I said, a little disgruntled in my job. I was a little agitated by some decisions that had been made. I was kind of starting to act out. And then one day, in a training session with a lot of the vice presidents and higher in our organization present in the room, I made a comment that was unacceptable. And I knew as soon as I did it, had I been doing the work and adjusting and looking at whether or not it was time to leave the job before that, that never would have happened quite that way. But it had. And I had a lot to forgive. When we choose forgiveness, we free ourselves to cherish life, to live in the positive mindset, to choose that space, that place of joy. There's so many things that if they haven't already shown up for you in your life, they will, and they're uncomfortable. They make us feel like we have to be maybe on our guard, or we have to pay attention, or someone makes a comment and it doesn't sit well. Let's ask ourselves about that discomfort. Let's ask ourselves and evaluate what it means, because it's usually prompting us, each and every one of us, to some level of growth. As soon as I realized what I needed, as soon as I started taking the steps to move into that practice of forgiveness, everything changed. The ailment or illness that I had didn't go away magically, but it went away. The injury healed. My attitude shifted, and within a very short time, a new job in the same field I had worked in showed up. There was a lot of prayer work that took place in there. I had a lot of sessions with practitioners and ministers throughout that process because I needed to shift the way I was thinking and the way I was looking at life. I had been feeling like I was in this big cloudy storm, and all of a sudden the clouds kind of whisked away. We've had those moments. We know what that feels like. And yet when it shows up again, and the discomfort shows up again, we want to avoid it. We want to ignore it. And we cannot do that. It does not serve the spirit, the soul within you. If you're struggling and you're not quite sure how to do that whole thing about forgiveness, just speak some words about it. You don't have to understand all the ins and outs of the mechanisms of it. When you take it to prayer, you don't have to understand it all, because Spirit is handling that piece for you. But you can say some very simple things. I forgive others. I forgive myself. I forgive the situation and the circumstance. I bless others. I bless myself. Simple, simple statements that will help you completely shift. We don't have to know the perfect way to bring it forth. We don't have to know the perfect way to heal it. We only have to have the desire to make it so. Ernest Holmes says this: suffering is not God ordained. Because he creates his own experiences, he becomes individualized. By individuality is meant self-choice, volition, conscious mind, personified spirit, perfect and complete freedom, and a power to back up that freedom. A power to back it up. That's the God presence. So if you are enduring discomfort, take a look at that. If you have allowed it to create suffering in your life, it's time to really take a look at that and lean into it and find out what it is here to tell you. Because it's here. It's a part of our daily lives. It's a part of everything that we do and every interaction we have. So this week, let's look at that. Let's look at those things that make us uncomfortable. And let us lean into that discomfort. Because with that, we can welcome change. We can welcome growth. We can welcome transformation. We can choose to live. We can choose to live freely, openly, gracefully, and gratefully. How beautiful does that sound? Please pray with me. So as we just bring this time together right here and right now, we know, as we have known all along, that Spirit is present. There is one God, one power, one presence. It permeates all things, all life, and it is here now. And it operates through, in, as each and every one of us. And through this power, through this presence, through this source, we are all connected one to another. We are united. We are unified. May we find peace in that language. May we find calm in that knowing, in that, and some reassurance. And as we move through this week, this day today and this week, as we go forward, may we lean into anything that feels a little uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable. Lean into the discomfort, knowing that it is in that place of being uncomfortable that we absolutely have the opportunity to grow and to flourish and to transform our lives, so that the highest and best for each of us can come forth. How perfect is that? How blessed we are. And I'm grateful right here and right now for this opportunity. I'm grateful for this time to provide this message through this technology. And I am grateful for that power and that presence that is God in all things. And grateful for the opportunity to bring forth my words that I speak in this space in prayer, knowing it's all done, it's all good, and it's all perfect. So I just let it go and I let it be, and so it is.
running around fixing this and that, giving it